Hi everyone. In this tutorial video, explain the foundations around different wave types, explain the reasons for sets and lulls in ocean waves, explain the impact of high and low tides on surf conditions, and finally explain rip currents. So let's talk in more detail about some of these condition factors. So let's start with wave types. In particular, we're talking about surf waves. Not all ocean swimming and coastlines will have surf waves that you need to negotiate. For those beaches that do have surf waves, we need to understand wave stages in order to then understand how as swimmers we plan to manage it with some new techniques. In this tutorial video, we'll discuss wave stages and how to recognise them to give you that early knowledge needed to tackle them in your next swim. So waves are formed from wind blowing across the surface of the water. It's easy to see how a strong wind would help create larger waves and a slower or softer wind would create smaller waves. However, the speed of the wind is only one part. The key to wave development is what's called fetch. That's the name given to the distance the wind travels, and in part, the time the wind is blowing across the water surface. It's the fetch that's the key ingredient. Strong wind across a long distance, such as hundreds of kilometres across the ocean, over a long period of time will form larger waves. There are 5 stages to a surf wave that you need to negotiate as an ocean swimmer. These wave stages are 1. A swell, 2. A green wave, 3. The impact zone, 4. A broken wave, and 5. Whitewash. These ocean swells, or ground swells as they can be called, are really non-technical for us swimmers. With the exception of very large ocean swells, that should be avoided anyway, a small to medium ocean swell that has a total height from peak to trough of up to 1 metre, or just over 3 feet, should be no problem for the beginner or intermediate swimmer to swim over comfortably. The key point to understand about ocean swells is that it's energy travelling and not moving water that is travelling. Let me explain. If you look at the ocean surface, a swell, or this energy, can be represented as a basketball, and think of the water surface as a blanket. The energy is the basketball moving under the blanket or the water surface. It's a force or pressure of water. The surface of the water remains stationary, just like the blanket. If we put a small inflatable boat on the water surface, it would simply move up and down as the swell energy moved past. The boat would remain in the same spot. As swimmers, you and I will move the same as the boat. If we were to just tread water, we will just move up and down. As we swim into, across, or with the direction of the swell, we will only feel the pressure of us moving upwards and downwards. It's not going to push us, and it's not going to pull us under the water. The next is a green wave, or as surfers might call them, a catchable wave. They are created from the ocean swell pressure meeting the ocean floor. As the swell pressure moves towards the beach, it will start to rise upwards as the ocean floor rises, or the water depth gets shallower. That water pressure is forced upwards, creating what surfers commonly call a green wave. This is the wave stage that surfers love. It's where they can catch the wave. And, as we'll learn in a later tutorial, it's where we're going to have a little bit of fun to learn how to body surf and swim back into the shore through this surf break. What we begin to see as the swell pressure hits the ocean floor is the wave face, or the front of the wave. It becomes steeper. At this point, there are 2 key dynamics to understand. Firstly, that water surface, even at this green wave stage, is not moving. Just like our ocean swell example with the basketball and the blanket. The wave pressure is moving under the water, but the surface remains still, flowing over the wave. The second dynamic is one that is changing. Under the water, that water pressure is starting to create a circular motion, or a vortex. This vortex, as we'll discover later in our practical surf skills tutorial, we can use to our advantage. The next is the impact zone, and it's after the green wave. Of all the wave stages, this is the most technical, and usually the most intimidating for beginner ocean swimmers. Here those wave dynamics we talked about on the green wave start to change even further. We change from a pressure of water moving towards the shore and a stationary water surface to now have actual moving water. The circular motion or vortex of water that started in the green wave has now taken over completely. As the ocean floor continues to come up, making the water depth shallower, the water pressure has pushed as high as it can. Because of the vortex motion, the top of the wave tips over the front. Now we have water energy that is moving forward and downward. It's often the hardest stage to get through as a swimmer, as the forward moving water stalls you. and the downward moving water means that you need to dive under the wave. It's more challenging, but swimmers can easily manage them with some essential new skills. As the wave changes in the impact zone, we can identify two types of breaking waves. One regular surfers would refer to as a dumping wave, and then the less challenging wave we call a spilling wave or rolling wave. A dumping wave is commonly formed as the result of the ocean floor coming up or getting shallower quickly. As an ocean swell approaches the shore, a steeper ocean floor will force the energy of the swell to rise quickly, creating a steeper wave face. Because of the faster forming wave vortex, it pours the water over the top, causing this dumping effect. The challenge for open water swimmers wanting to swim out past a dumping wave is the impact of this downward moving water. It's dumping. It creates an increased amount of water turbulence in the impact zone. Depending on the size of the wave, this can be anywhere from 1 foot right through to 3 feet or a metre in depth. The other wave type in the impact zone is the spilling wave or a rolling wave. The same as the dumping wave, this wave forms after the green wave. However, now the ocean floor is flatter, moving from deeper to shallower in a much more gradual progression. The gradual change in the ocean depth means that the vortex created in the green wave has time to build slowly, with the usual outcome that the top of the wave simply tumbles over rather than dumps. We like these waves, both for the ease and safety of swimming out, but also that they're easier and gentler to manage when we're swimming into the shore as well. A wave that is now formed in the impact zone moves to the next wave stage, a broken wave. For open water swimming, we differentiate between this stage of broken wave and the final wave stage of whitewash due to the how, that is, how we manage each. The earlier broken wave and the later whitewash stage are quite different in the how we negotiate each of them as a swimmer. In later tutorial videos, we'll be addressing the specific techniques you can use to swim out through the surf and swim back to the shore for both of these wave types. If we go back to our wave diagram and focus on the broken wave to whitewash stages, there are a number of wave variables that can change. 4 in fact. Having some understanding and awareness of these allows you to start making some decisions. As a beginner, that decision-making process can be hard, and you will make some small mistakes. However, as your experienced brain develops out of regular practice, you'll find your decisions and actions will become a lot more automated and faster. It'll be like second nature. So let's look at these variables. As we look at our new broken wave moving towards the shoreline, it makes sense that we understand that the seafloor is starting to rise, that it's getting shallower. We need to think of the seafloor as starting to apply drag to the wave as it moves over its surface. It's this drag that gives us the 4 change variables. The first of the variables is wave speed. The drag starts to decrease the speed of the broken wave as it approaches the shoreline. We can visually see this in 2 ways. Firstly, of course, is simply observing the speed of an individual wave. However, this can be a little difficult to accurately judge. The other more obvious way to see the speed between the waves change is the distance between each wave, or whitewash. They'll become closer together as they approach the shoreline. As a swell or a green wave, each of the peaks can be 30 metres or more apart. As our whitewash approaches the shore, that distance can be as little as 5 to 10 metres. The second variable is wave height. The surface drag from the ocean bottom and the slowing of the wave will have another outcome of reducing the wave height, the height of the moving water that is above the water surface. And thirdly, like the reducing wave height above the surface that is starting to come down, the depth of the moving water and water turbulence that is under the water will gradually become shallower and shallower. And finally, the fourth variable that is in part a combination of the previous 2, the tail, or distance of the moving water or turbulence immediately behind the whitewash wave. This distance of turbulence will reduce considerably as it approaches the shoreline. As an open water swimmer who's beginning to take on the surf break and swim in the open ocean, then having a deeper understanding of ocean waves, along with where and how water forces are forming, is really important. From here you can start making decisions on how to best negotiate the surf, making it safer for you and for others, and get you out through the surf break as quickly as possible, with the least effort. So what are sets and lulls? If you're looking to make your open water swim an ocean swim with surf conditions, then along with understanding the types of waves, wave sets and lulls are the next thing to consider. So what are they? When waves are formed in the ocean, the wind can create groups of waves. This can be a group of anywhere from 3 to 8 larger waves that come through, one after the other, and then disappear with all the following waves being smaller. This group of larger waves we call a set. The gap after that, with only smaller waves, we call a lull. The set of larger waves tends to be in a group and only lasts for a handful of waves. The lull can be anywhere from 2 minutes to 20 minutes. So it makes sense to understand this. Look to identify what the wave types are and when and how the sets and lulls occur before you go out for your swim. Swimming out, pick the gap between the sets when there is a lull. This will make your task of getting through the surf a whole lot easier. Unless you're in a race and the gun has gone off and you just have to manage the surf in front of you as best you can, then the key lesson to sets and lulls here is patience. So how does high and low tides impact your swim? Ocean tides are one of the biggest waves we have. Effectively, they are global in size. They are in effect extremely long waves that move across our oceans, and they're caused primarily by the gravitational force placed on the Earth by the Moon's orbit. So why is this important? It allows us to understand why ocean and surf conditions can be different from one week to another. We have 2 tidal movements each day, 2 high tides and 2 low tides. And because the timing of these works on a lunar day, which is why the moon is important, we have these 2 tidal movements every 24 hours and 50 minutes. So one Saturday when you head to the beach for your regular ocean swim, the tide could be at its highest. But the following Saturday, the tide could be low. The second key consideration to note is the surface of the ocean floor. It's rarely a perfect graduation from deep water to shallow. If this was the case, then waves would perfectly and evenly form every time. So when tides change from low tide to high or high tide to low, then the ocean swell is going to move over this uneven ocean floor in different ways. At the high tide, the waves might break closer to the shore. Maybe it's a spilling wave type. At low tide, because of a sharp bank on the ocean floor, it causes the waves to build quickly and turn into a dumping wave. So tides can make a big impact on your surf conditions and your negotiation of these during your swim. This understanding and assessment all becomes important as you plan your swim. Now having understanding of waves and how they form, that wave sets and lulls exist, and that tides are constantly changing from high to low and back again, then you're now aware of the key dynamics that drive rip currents. Rip currents have a reputation of being dangerous, and yes, some rip currents can be strong and move water out to the sea very quickly. Every attempt to be safe in the water should be taken. As a beginner, the advice is to learn how to identify a rip and then avoid it by moving up and down the beach to find a safer location to swim. So what are they? Well, they form because of waves, sets, and tide movements. As waves move towards the shore, that wave and whitewash is a moving mass of water. When we have sets come through, a group of larger waves, then this can amplify the amount of water that is moving towards the shore. All this water now needs to somehow move back out to the sea. Closer to shore, the water will start moving sidewards, looking for a path back out to the ocean. This water moving sidewards across the beachfront is called a sweep. A sweep can move across the beachfront anywhere from 20 metres to 200 metres before it finds a path back out to the ocean. And once it finds that channel out, it forms what we refer to as a rip current. Where swimmers can find trouble in these conditions comes in 2 ways. Firstly, the current itself can be uncomfortable as the water pressure is trying to push you sideways to the shore, as in the sweep current, and then out away from the shore in the rip current. The second issue is that these currents can form deeper channels of water. The deeper channel can cause swimmers to lose their footing on the bottom, making them more susceptible to the force of the rip current. The advice here is not to panic. The rip current only flows away to the shore until it reaches the open water, just past the outer wave break. To manage a rip current as it starts to pull you out is not to try and swim against it. The flow rate of the water in the rip can be strong. So no matter how much or how fast you swim, you might not be able to make any real distance against it. Your plan is to swim sideways to the current. Swimming sideways means that you can swim out of the rip current and into the more stationary water. Once you find the water with no current, you can then work your way back to the shore with the incoming waves. If you followed the rip current all the way out past the surf break, then as we mentioned, the water will stop moving as it hits the ocean water. Then, again, your approach is to swim parallel to the shore until you're away from the current, and then swim into the shore through the wave break zone. We'll see you in the next video.